Hi there. You know, you can learn a lot from the fairy tales of the past. My last video mentioned the boy who cried wolf in the way we're made to jump at any shadow or threat by the government warning about terrorists and viruses that never seem to eventuate in the way they propose, and yet we conform to the stringent new rules that come into effect. We're told these are necessary for the good of society. We're in this together and saving lives. And yet these new rules never seem to be retracted. Instead of minimal governance getting on with the broader strokes of our lives as they were created to do, it seems they're clawing their way into our very existence with oppressive rules and laws that stay in force long after the supposed threat has subsided. I honestly can't remember the last terrorist bomb going off in my country, or ever having stepped over a body that succumbed to a virus for that matter. And yet new rules pepper the headlines daily, along with admonishments for people made to look like nutters for even questioning what's going on and if all this is needed. Continual derision of those that might swim against the tide is taken up from the newscast by people simply because they were told how to put these deniers to rest with an anti-vaxxer here and a climate change denier there, when they never took the time to do at least a modicum of research themselves, and yet have blind faith that would be envied by any cult member looking to climb the ranks to martyrdom. Of course, the technocracy is only too happy to lend a helping hand by wiping those trying to inform others from various platforms, and bring to the fore any who would espouse the new truth, along with helpful advice to follow to embrace the new normal, whether they be doctor, actor, or ex-head of a software company. And as I look around me in disbelief at the literal insanity infecting society, I can't help but bring to mind another fairy tale, read to those about to enter the sleep realm. You know, the one about the emperor's new clothes. And yet every time someone points out the emperor isn't wearing any, by pointing out the facts a Google search away, such as incredibly low death counts or the harm being done by forced solutions, they're brushed away by deplatforming or algorithmed back to the Stone Age, so the propaganda train can steam away unhindered without the troublesome facts to get in the way. The tactics of this grandiose introduction to a change of life has been formulaic. These things always start with a shock to the system: towers falling, islands sinking, filmed mass shootings, videos of people collapsing dramatically in a far-off country with a warning it's coming here next. Then there's a fumbling incompetence from the leaders as they stumble around pretending to try and make sense of it all. They wait for a cry from the people of things to be done, and a well-deserved superhero pose from the leader as they hammer out more laws in a tap drip after the fact to ensure it will never happen again. Ah yes, good times. It all reminds me of a magic show from a 7th birthday party. As the birthday honour, I was called up by the magician to help with the various tricks, even seeming to be in charge of the finale of a set where I seemed to others to have the power to pull a reappearing coin or a hanky from a hat. The magician even told me in a confiding whisper to kick him gently on the behind as he fumbled in his bag for the next trick, so I'd look cool in front of my friends. Of course, as we know when we grow a little older, it was the magician in control all along. I was the one just following the same old script he ran at every birthday party. Perhaps that's why modern generations are treated more and more like children these days, with more and more things to tell the magician how he's doing it all wrong, so he can show his real power to our amazement and unquestioning applause at the end of the trick. And like all magic shows, the spectator majority are content to pay to be fooled and entertained, while it's only a minority that are looking for how it was actually all done. And so I see the governments of the world spending like drunken sailors, and I can see it's to keep the crowds more passive to the new rules with an offer of money for nothing, while at the same time devaluing currencies, creating vast amounts of future debt, opening the door to monopolies, and hoping to beg the most in bailouts come the introduction of a world currency. I see the government, at least here in Australia and the UK, so far not content with just restricting movements and freedoms, locking down individual suburbs and going door to door in the next stage of a new normal while ridiculing those who refuse to have a test. New cases, they say, when it's just a positive result from an unreliable test that holds the fate of a person's freedom and perhaps the freedoms of those who have stopped to speak to them at some stage in the last 2 weeks. Now the Victorian government in Australia have locked down council blocks, holding all to ransom while tests are done and freedoms removed. You can bet these are the first because those living in them are mostly on welfare and low income. But don't think it can't happen to private apartment blocks and individual houses later when the precedent has been set. All this in a state where last year there were over 100 deaths from the flu to the end of August, and this virus from the same family has claimed less than a quarter of that toll thus far to mid-July. Of course, the madness won't stop. It's a story of opening up only to close down again. Second waves or new threats to distract from facts, constant changing of what to do and what not to do until, for many, they'll be grateful for the solution to make it all stop. And once they have their mark, they'll be told of those who won't take it, so things can't go back to normal just yet. And they'll forget that their injection is meant to protect them, and like the good Stockholm Syndrome captives they are, they will persecute the heretical ones who will not conform for the sake of saving lives and allowing some normality granted from the constant bombardment of changing rules. But today, without work and the normal bread and circuses from new TV shows and sports because of lockdown, people have nothing to do but sit in front of the news and be spoon-fed the latest statistics that mean very little on the hour every hour. Another 270 cases, they cry in earnest, when it means nothing but that they are testing more people and therefore getting more positive results. Deaths are barely increasing at all. So surely it should be good news. Immunity is spreading and it's not nearly as dangerous as first thought because for every positive test, the death to infection ratio goes down. But no, more restrictions, more lockdowns, more blame cast at non-believers. It's hard to take the panic all that seriously when there's no one wiping down packets or fruit that's been touched by people who brought it in from the warehouse or who put it back on the shelf, where toilet doors and stalls are not frantically cleaned after each visitor, and news crews are still sent out to risk their lives on a street somewhere near the latest hotspot to do nothing more than read some statistics for 30 seconds live to the news anchor salivating on air at the updated information. I see the ridiculous double standard of people that are threatened with fines at census time for putting down incorrect information, and yet doctors, seeing people plainly dying of other causes than virus, are instructed to put them down as a virus death to inflate figures because they tested positive post-mortem. I see the ways justifications are made for military to help out on the streets in this crisis. After all, with the increasing amount of hardware issued yearly to police, there's not much difference now anyway, but it's very reminiscent of a more authoritarian regime, isn't it? I see the distancing being of benefit to any technology and tracking company as people increasingly have to use devices just to communicate with each other, leading to dependence on technology and governments for everything, while only the facts they want you to see appear in searches or news feeds. I see the food being targeted, with meat companies shut down due to cases springing up and the interruption of just-in-time supply lines. I see the person with a very poor poker face, who until recently headed a company that forced upgrades to people's Windows computers and also released Office software that was no longer yours to buy outright, with a subscription-only annual amount to be able to use it, moving these same principles to the human condition for a yearly forced jab with no choice. I see Monsanto trying to do the same subscription template for seeds in the world because theirs are only viable for a year. I see Musk and his satellites covering the globe and get the feeling all these groups and individuals are positioning themselves to become the crowned head of a necessity. Medicine, food, money, internet, governance, distribution, law and order. It's all heading to a single monopoly and a head for each crown. And if you won't dance to their tune, you'll have to be ostracized or made an example of to keep others in line. It wouldn't surprise me to see the 1% having nothing more to gain from almost infinite wealth to maybe just buying a country, as it's plain after this fiasco every country will be utterly bankrupt and ripe for a new leader who will run affairs from some global headquarters like a classic Bond villain, because as governance gets taken further and further away from those it purports to serve, the less and less the people's will can be heard. Of course, a lot of people would plant the flag of conspiracy theorist on all this, and turn back to the TV for sustenance before they go back to their pre-packaged, hopefully virus-free dinner without a second thought. Others will see this as partly true and want to do some more research, and others will just be nodding sadly at the truth of it all. And so here we are, pointing at the Emperor with the innocence of a child after asking the questions that children do, like why and how, and is that true? It's not what I see. The other onlookers will either believe blindly that he's wearing a wonderful radiant garment, or be afraid enough of looking stupid or ignorant that they'll go along with it all, when really they see the same as us. Just another fat, egotistical head of state parading around to show off their non-existent finery, and who has been fooled at the taxpayers' expense once again, while the charlatans stay laughing back in the shadows, counting the money they've accumulated with nothing but empty threats and promises once again.